Hello and welcome to your Exchange Embedded Connectivity and Data Manager training. Now, the training that we're doing today is got some items that I'm going to be trying to do as much of this as possible in your training in my training environment. And there's a lot of feedback coming back from that room. Do you want to mute that line and then come off of mute for questions? Great. So I'm going to try to do as much of this as possible in a training environment. Now, noting that because it's a training environment and I have a very simulated connectivity set up, the examples aren't perfect, but we'll kind of work with that. And then if we want, at the end, I can then show you what it looks like live in your environment and take that off of the recording should you choose, okay? So with that being said, I'm in my training environment. And what we're doing is I'm on a page called Facility Inbox. This Facility Inbox is a new location that you will have in your environment. It's already active today. And the Facility Inbox is a location that is going to receive the results of external entity searching. Now, this external searching is probably going to come together as I describe things over the next several minutes, okay? So external searching, what I refer to for this is really looking at your hospitals, their documentation, healthcare entities that might be sharing information electronically on the information kind of highway as a less technical way of talking about it. And to get you in a context is think about when you go to a doctor's office or something and you're filling out paperwork and they'll say to you, do you give permission for us to share your information electronically? And you give a yes or no. Kind of start thinking about that even for yourself, right? When you say yes, it means that the entity is able to share your information to other healthcare entities that are receiving and or sending information, okay? So we're looking at those external places. Today, you obtain that information by calling them, saying, can you fax this over? Can you email this? Might be a part of your admission paperwork from your admissions team, etc. Okay. Now, what's happening inside of MatrixCare, we have automatic and manual searches that can be done. So what I'm going to do first of all is I'm going to talk about census. So when census is entered into a patient's record, okay, anytime we add census and admission, we create a face sheet. We make a change to the previous address on the face sheet. Those actions will produce an automated search. So it'll generate that. And in the inbox that I'll be going back to, we'll have a line that ultimately will be the result of this external search that you'll be able to use. Okay. Those things are happening automatically. Okay. And just to be clear, if I come back to this face sheet, this particular address under the previous address is going to be a core starting point of where that search is generating from. This automated search is actually, yes. Oh, I thought I heard something. So basically from this previous address, this zip code means that when this search is automated, it's going to be looking in a 50-mile radius from this particular location. And if it finds something that's in another zip code so like kind of think of like a little circle that's expanding and growing. Every time it finds a hit of information, it's going to expand another 50 miles from that entity. So until it exhausts and there's no more information for 50 miles. So that means if I update this address, that's going to automatically start another search and we'll have something available for us to look at should we choose. Okay. Now, additionally, we have the ability to do a manual search, and that's with this button that says document search. If I trigger a document search, a manual search, that might be done because maybe MDS coordinator, maybe you've done an interview to the resident or a family member, and they're like, oh yeah, my mom, she had some surgery. It was at this one place. It was like 2 years ago. I think she had it on her knee, right? And then you might want to look for information about 2 years ago. That might be a time that you want to click this document search to generate another search. So you can do them on demand by pushing this button, and you can see this green banner that says a connect document search was initiated, slowly kind of fades away. And what happens is, now I'm going to bring us back to the inbox. Okay. In the inbox, you can see my name here, and there's a current pending. That pending is actually while the search is being generated. So think of that 50 miles, and it's like looking, and then if it finds something, it'll keep expanding 50 miles until there's nothing more. That search can take maybe 3 or 4 minutes. It might take up to 30 minutes. It just depends upon how much information is available on your patient. Okay. Now, right below that, you can see that I've got my name here, and we've got a new. With the new, that is a completed search that's available for me to view and look and determine what I want to use for information. And I'm going to be going into a lot more detail about that, but just know this is a completed search. Now, I actually have a different environment available here real quick. And I want to point out another couple things, and I'm shortly going to start talking more and more about how these searches happen. Okay, it's all going to come together. Now we can also see on this environment that I've got some completed ones, and completed ones over here have this orange CCD to the left. A completed icon means that we searched a document, we found a CCD, and we used a document to reconcile to our patient's record. That process is what we call data manager, okay? And at the second half of this call, we'll all be focused around data manager, okay? And that's a completed line. New is reflecting that there's search results, but nobody's done anything with those items yet. Okay, and you can see that I've got several pages here. So 2 different environments I wanted to show. Now, if I come back to the first environment I was showing you in, this pending, this is going to be going on. And if I stared at the page, that pending would never change. But if I refresh the page and it comes back as I leave or do work, this will let me know when it's done. That's what I'm going to bring your attention to, this bell that's up in the upper right-hand corner. Now, you might already be familiar with the bell because the bell is also used for e-prescribe connectivity to your pharmacy. Okay. And so you might see when there's failed e-prescription messages or there's unsolicited pharmacy fill messages, we've leveraged the same bell to let us know that there's items in the inbox that have not yet been used. So if I click on this bell, you can see this external document search results are ready for review. If I have anything new in this box or on this page, I'm sorry, then that one will be reflective of that. And if I'm anywhere else in the record and I click on this, if I click on this external document search are ready for review, it'll bring me to the inbox. So I can either use the facility inbox to get here, or I can use that bell. Okay, and now you can see that the second search is now complete. So it took roughly probably 7 or 8 minutes or so for that search to complete. And that time can vary again based upon how much information is available. Now, at this point, I've said a whole lot of stuff, and many of you might still be going, I don't get it. What is this search? So here, I want to start talking about, again, remembering how we all, when we fill out our paperwork at a doctor's office and they say, will you let us share this information or not? We say yes or no. That permission is granted or declined. Okay. All of these searches are going to be kind of on that. So if somebody had signed out at another entity and said, no, do not share my information, then that means they can come back here and have nothing available for you. And that would be because they aren't sharing information. Now, how do we do this sharing? Well, external entities hospitals, dialysis offices, doctors' offices, clinics, etc. Everybody might be sharing, but everybody is not sharing, okay? So each of these entities that choose to share, giving you a little background here, if they choose to share information, basically what they do is they subscribe with either an entity called Carequality, or they subscribe with an entity called Commonweal. And I like to compare Commonweal and Carequality. They're like the equivalent of Apple and Samsung, right? We either have an Apple phone or we have a Samsung phone. That's kind of like Carequality and Commonweal. They are the two biggest information sharing entities. And with those two entities, when other entities are sharing on either of those networks, what happens for you all with your connection in your environment is going to be that you're going to be able to see the results of either entity being shared. And that's because your Matrix Care environment is now connected to our third-party partner, Health Gorilla. And Health Gorilla, what they do is they receive information from both Carequality and Commonweal. So you get to receive the information regardless of which entity they choose to share with, okay? That's a little background for you, okay? So now that I've put this all in there, the hospitals are sharing information, doctors' offices, dialysis agencies, etc. If the information's available, then the search result comes back. It's a result of an external search. It's not coming from Matrix Care. And I can view the available results. So here, also note right here, see what this resident name, this column is all black, meaning that they're just a search right now. When I click the view to the left, that's going to let me see all of the entities that were searched. And again, this is a training environment, so my results are very limited, okay? But you can see I've got an Athena Health, Good Health Clinic, Health Gorilla, some hospital, etc. Now over here on the right, you can see that my environment's showing all zeros, meaning we searched these entities, but nothing is available in these particular spaces, entities, healthcare agencies, in the last 30 days. So this result is defaulting to a 30 days look back, which normally is going to be very sufficient for you all with your live environment. For me, I need to expand this so I have something to work with. If I click on the calendar here and I can say I just want to see today, yesterday, last week, next week, or I'm going to try the last year and I still have nothing, but I'm actually going to make that even more because it's training and it's very limited. So I changed it for 5 years. Once I did that, you now can see numbers over here on the far right. What that is this 10 is telling me that Healthcare.org has 10 available documents that I can look at. Athena Health has 3, 2, 1, etc. Whatever entity has the most returns is going to be at the top. The entities with the least returns will be at the bottom. And if you see a 0, that can mean that that entity either doesn't have anything in the time frame that you were looking at, like I had to expand mine to get to it, or the resident was there, but there's nothing available to view. Okay, so what you see on the screen right now is going to be more similar to what you'll see live. Okay, and then of course you're going to see hospital entities and clinics and whatnots that are relative to your area. Now, once we see these, we want to look at those documents. We can expand any of these entities and we can see what's available. Now, reminder, in my environment, the types of documents are going to be very limited. And then at the end of this call, I'll turn off the recording and we'll look in your environment to see some better examples of what's available to you all. But note that with this Healthcare.org has these 10 documents. All of them are labeled continuity of care except for this progress note. If I wanted to look at this progress note, I click on the title and it shows me what this document looks like, okay? Sometimes these documents will look like a PDF. Sometimes they'll look kind of like this CCD type of format. And then down at the bottom, you'll see the white page with the text on it, like you're used to receiving in paper form. But they're all different. Sometimes you might see imported document. And if you, or sorry, imported record. Imported record, I've seen those be anything from wound photos to what are they called? Summary care visits. So like if they go to the ER and come back, it'll be just those notes of what changed with the visit. Those imported documents or records can be a lot of different things. So you have to look at them to kind of determine if they're a document that's a good fit for you. Okay, and I can see all of these in their entirety. Okay, now at the top of the document, you're going to be able to see, that one's a bad example. Let me try this one here. You're able to see the date and time of those documents. So here's my name, date of birth, we've got race, we've got the document date created. So this is an old document, but you can read those different components. And then with those documents that you choose from, then you're going to be able to make a decision of which documents you want to make a part of your record. And then additionally, which document you want to use to potentially do the data manager, which is reconcile information into your patient chart. What we're going to do first is I'm going to show you what it's like to take documents and just push them right into resident documents. That's what we call the exchange portion. So pretending like I have all these wonderful documents here, they all say continuity of care, not a lot of variety here. But if I want all of these documents to be a part of my record, I can select away. And then down here at the bottom, there's a save and save and reconcile. What the save will do will take a copy of that particular document and push it over into resident documents. Okay. The save and reconcile is what we use when we do data manager, meaning we're going to put a copy inside of resident documents for the exchange portion, and then we're going to reconcile to use the information to write it to our record. That'll be my second example. Okay. But first I'm going to hit save. And temporarily, we're going to see a little spin of this dial, and that's taking the chosen documents and moving them over into resident documents. And it takes a minute. When it's done pushing those documents over, you're going to see this document saved confirmation, and it says those documents have been successfully saved. Do you want to be redirected to the inbox? The inbox, if I say inbox, it's going to take me back to the first page we were on, where I can then search another resident and search their documents and theoretically push them over into resident document.
Yeah, thank you.
Did you have a question there? No? Okay. And with that inbox, that would allow me to go back, which is what I'm going to do temporarily. Okay. So I'm going to say inbox. And you can see it brings me right back to this page. Do I have a question now? Do I have a question now? No? Okay. Thank you.
Is your phone on or not?
No, we don't have a question. Sorry, we're just checking.
That's okay. Not a problem. So did you see how I clicked on inbox and it brought me back to this page? So that would be like looking at documents, searching, pushing them into the record, and now I want to go to another resident. Okay. Now I'm going to take and go from this resident and I'm going to go to resident documents for Stephanie. And what you can see is right here in the inbox, I checked 5 boxes and I have 5 documents inside of resident documents. So you might have your health information or medical records who is responsible for scanning resident documents into Matrix Care, and then they attach them to the record, and then they label them, and then they do all these things. Those users might very well use Inbox just to push their resident documents into the chart. Once those documents are here inside of the resident documents page, which I understand, I have a lot of nurses in the audience today, you may not do these tasks, but you can definitely carry them over to simplify who does bring those documents into the chart. So these will land inside of the record in this category called inbox document. So if I want to move these into the other category document types that I use routinely, I can come in and click edit on any one of these, look at the edit details. I can come in and change the title, okay, to whatever I want it to be. I also can change the category it's in. So maybe this was actually a consult and I want it in the consults category. And I also could adjust the date. So if I wanted this date to not be today's date, but I wanted it to be the 30th, for instance, I can do so. And within your organization, if that particular document, I don't know if you all share residents with the other care settings that you have, but if you had an AL that works directly with Goldberg Care Center, since they don't have Exchange, but Goldberg does, you can still share a copy to them and say, I want the copy to not only be for my care setting, but I also want a copy to go over to this residence chart that's also exists at the AL. So you can also share that document. And I got an error because it's a training environment. So I'm not going to share these real quick. I'm just going to hit save. Perfect. So now you can see that I've moved this change title from the inbox to the consults, and you can see that the comments show the entity it came from. It's owned by my care setting, and mine's showing not shared. So just that push was like a saving, saving, pushes a copy to resident documents, and then I have the option, should I choose, to relabel and move it into another category. Otherwise, you also have the choice, you could keep it inside of inbox documents forever, but majority of the folks I speak to like to move it into the areas they're used to seeing them in. That portion is what Exchange is just searching for the documents and taking and giving you an electronic way to bring them into the record. Does anybody have questions on that portion that's more simple before we get into the data manager, which is where you really get to use the a document of choice? Okay, I'm going to return to the inbox. Okay, and in the inbox, I'm going to go back into my same resident here, and we're going to go to view. Now with that view, I need to change the date and time again. Give me 1 second. All right, so I'm going to grab from continuity of care. So for the second portion, which is the data manager, you can only use continuity of care documents for data manager. Okay, I'm going to look at this one real quick and see if it has the data that I need. When we are looking for a data manager applicable document, you want to make sure that that document has your patient name information. It needs to have allergies on it. It needs to have medications on it that are active, and it needs to have diagnoses available. Okay. Now, in this case, I'm going to use this document, but note that my patient name doesn't match, but that's fine. I'm going to use it as an example. Okay. Once I've searched and looked at a document, and I'm ready for this to be the one I want to use for reconciliation, instead of using save, I'm going to use save and reconcile. The save and reconcile is going to do exactly what we just talked about, that first step, pushing a copy over into resident documents. And then it is also going to reconcile or set up this particular document for something for me to use to start writing information to the patient record. Now, before I do that, I do want to call out the fact that we're looking at a training environment. None of these hospital names really, make any sense to us, right? But when you're actually using the data manager portion, you're going to know that Stephanie is admitting from ABC Hospital. So you're going to be looking for ABC Hospital because that's they're coming from, and therefore the information from that care setting is what's going to be most relative. You're also not going to be picking a document that's 4 years old. You're going to be looking at something that has like today's date on it, so that it'd be the equivalent of what you'd be receiving on paper form, but it's going to be an electronic version to allow you to help start putting the information into the patient's record. So know that when we go to look at your live environment, you're going to see entity names that are relative to your space. And that's going to help you to pick where am I looking for the CCD that I'm going to use. So continuity of care, shorter name, CCD. I'm going to select, I'm going to do the save and reconcile. Same little spinner dial, pushing a copy over into the inbox documents inside of resident documents. But then now it's going to load the page so I have something I can use.
Wow.
That searching, that spinning of the dial there was technically what they call it. It was parsing the document, which means it's reading what information is on the document and it's loading it up into the MatrixCare page for something that we can make decisions off of. Okay. And with that, again, biggest key thing is make sure you're looking for the entity that your transfer is coming from, the most recent document, and that it has those pieces of data on it. Because if you pick a document that doesn't have diagnoses on it, then you'll have no diagnoses to be able to reconcile. So kind of, be discriminatory of what you're picking, because as you do these steps, it'll be on there. And yes, you could pick more than one CCD. However, the more CCDs you pick, the more complicated your reconciliation can be. So picking one is probably more real world practicality, but yes, you can pick as many as you choose. It'll just complicate it a bit. So now that we're looking at this cool loaded page, right? We've got demographics, diagnoses, allergies, and medications that are able to be reconciled, reviewed and reconciled is what we call this. So looking at our demographics, oh, and by the way, you can do these steps that I'm going to work. I'm going to work from left to right, but you can have this done in any order, okay? Except I will say that, and you can have it done by different individuals. So if you have like admissions, who's going to do the demographics tab, but then nursing comes in and does diagnoses and allergies and medications, totally fine. It doesn't matter who does what and when, as long as you have security for the area. Okay. So demographics. So on the left, this column is what was on my document. Now I pointed out that my name doesn't match, okay, already, but that's what was on the document. Now in the real world, you wouldn't have any matches like this one because this is simulated in my training environment because it's not a real connection, okay? But with this test over here, that's what my document said. And over here on the right, this is what I have inside of MatrixCare. So when I look at this, these yeses and nos are saying, do I want to update my MatrixCare record to match what was on my document? In the real world, maybe we put in Steph Lundeen and we had a different birth date, right? Then my choices are to say yes to all. And if I say yes to all, if I hit save, then my face sheet would be replaced with this information. If I say no to all, then I would hit save and my face sheet information would remain intact exactly as it is. Or I could do any combination of yeses and nos based upon each comparison, okay? In this bottom case, where there's no yes or no option, that's because the document has the status of married and I already have married on my face sheet. Therefore, there's nothing to reconcile because we already match. Okay. So if nothing's on there, it means your information is already a match and all you'll do is hit save and that'll move you through the tile. And of course, the only reason why I'm saying no to all of these is because I don't want to change the name of my resident to test patient. Okay. I'm going to touch save. And right here, you're going to notice that you get a green check mark. So now my demographics from that selected CCD have been reconciled, and you can see a date and timestamp of the user that made this decision. Now, I did all of this together for you all today, but let's pretend like I knew that this was a yes and this was a yes. if I'm going to get clarification on something, I can do this partially. I can save part of it and come back once I have the other information. So it can be done in steps should you need it that way as well. Okay. Now, we're going to move to diagnosis. When I go to diagnosis, we can see those same yeses and nos. These are the diagnoses that are on the document that I selected. And here's my snapshot of what I already have on Stephanie's face sheet. So if I already have this on the face sheet, then when I'm making my yes, no decisions here, I can look. So if you're somebody today who adds diagnoses to the face sheet and you've had a patient who returns, you probably go and look at your piece of paper and then you look at the screen in Matrix Care on the face sheet and you're like checking it off on your piece of paper, like, oops, I already have the hypertension. I already have this. And then you only add what's not there. This now is letting you visually see it electronically. So if I have anemia, diabetes, and drug or chemical induced diabetes as my PDPM primary clinical, now I can come over here and see the generalized anxiety, twin pregnancy, bad diagnoses, premature normal labor. These are all from a standard document. But if I want to use these, I can go yes to all, no to all, or any combination of what I do and don't want to put. Okay. So let's say that I have 2 yeses, the generalized anxiety and the normal labor I'm going to put on the face sheet and not do the twin pregnancy or preterm. And then I have one more choice. Right here, I have this default date diagnosed. When you're looking at these document information, these are the dates of the historical entries. So when I go to enter this to the face sheet, if I want to retain the dates of the document that I received, I would just hit save. If I want to update those dates to be today's date, I can check this box. And these 2 will get added with 8/4 as the date on the face sheet. So I'm going to hit save. And you can see my yeses, my nos, the date and time in which I made those decisions. And right over here on the right, you can see the addition of the general anxiety disorder and the uncomplicated delivery here. If I go to the face sheet, this is exactly what we'll see on the face sheet. And by looking at the face sheet, I'll come back here for you. On our diagnoses, you can see today's date was what they got added for. Okay, so that process allowed me to do that reconciliation. So I did the demographics and I did the diagnoses so far. Okay.
Hello, this is Joanna.
Joanna, do you have a question or do you want to put yourself on mute? I think she's on her phone. I'm going to mute her for us. Okay, there we go. All right, so, and that was me just going to the face sheet so you could see how I just, instead of having to manually key those in, I was actually able to see them electronically and make the choice to include them on my face sheet or deny them for being written to my face sheet. Okay. Now, before I go back, I want to show you the changes that happened in this inbox from what I've done so far. One, you can see that the name is now a hyperlink. That's because I've now written something to the record and it's connected to the chart. So if I clicked on the name here, that would just take me to the face sheet. The complete over here on the right is reflective as a CCD has been selected for the reconciliation process. To go back to that reconciliation, I can click on this reconcile and I'm right back where we were and it's partially done. So again, I can come and start to do parts of it, leave, come back, etc. Then we move through each of these. Now, allergies is normally done before medications, but for a demo purpose, I'm going to show you if I was to go to medications first. I want to show 2 things as it's trying to find those orders and put them on the screen for me. Right here, you can see my patient safety warning. This is telling me reconciling any allergies within the document and verify the complete allergy list is present on the resident's face sheet. prior to reconciling any meds. So this is the same little alert you would get when you enter orders directly to the patient chart. We are trying to prompt you to do so. Same thing, but now it looks like such. Okay, so I can hit close and you can see that I've got a page to work with. Up here on the top right, you can see that I have no known drug allergies and eggs and fish that are on the face sheet already, but I have not reconciled this allergies. Therefore, I still received that alert. Also, and this is why I asked if we had admissions in the mix. Note that on my pharmacy here, I already have a pharmacy on this patient's face sheet. Okay. So if I did not already have a pharmacy on the face sheet, I would not be able to proceed with the medication portion. So as you start to use Exchange with Data Manager, if your admissions person is not already putting pharmacy on the face sheet, you really want to make sure that they're doing that earlier in their process instead of later, so that nursing, you don't have to leave here and go back to the face sheet to add the pharmacy, because you know we won't be able to do any orders if we don't know what pharmacy they'll go to. So there are two little segues on there. Now I'm going to return back to the allergies so we can do this portion. So with allergies, in this particular document that I have, what you can see is I have no yeses and nos. All I have is this bottom section with a lot of allergies, because I've never used this document before. But you can see codeine, penicillin, etc. The items that are listed here, they would only give me the yes, no option if, I'm going to show a little window here for a moment, if they were matching. So right here, so see where it says penicillins in parentheses PCN, the source document says penicillin and penicillins. It has to look exactly the same as ours before it would give me a yes, no option. If it's not on their document exactly how our formulary is, it will require you to add them manually. Okay, so with that, we kind of have each of these. However, instead of just saying, nope, none of these allergies can be parsed, we push them into this and say, we can read these on the source document, but they don't match our allergens exactly. And we want to make sure that your drug to allergy alerts will still work. So then we give you the add allergy button, which is what I'm going to show you, which is the one I had up in a moment ago. So I still need to add them, but I can see them here. So I can go through, whoops, let's undo that. Do my drugs, and here I can still go down and select penicillin. I can do the allergies. So as you're looking at this page, the same way you would normally add these allergies directly to the face sheet, now you've got a working space from here where I can say allergy, save and new, do my next one, coding, and search the drug. And find my drug accordingly and continue to save and new as long as I need to. Okay, so I'm going to go through and just do a couple more. So like Lyrica. Okay, I'm not going to do all of them with you all staring and watching, but you get the idea how I'm able to go through and do all of my saves as applicable. Once I'm all done, okay, I'm still here on the face sheet. You can see that I've made that change to the face sheet here. My resident banner will update after I leave this page, but you can see those changes are in effect with today's start use day or begin date, sorry. And if I still was missing that pharmacy, I could add it at this point. So you've got a working page of your face sheet so that you could add anything should it be missing. Okay, you can also see your diagnoses, all of those that we adjusted. Now I'm going to pretend like I finished all of this and then I would hit save. Here's my checkbox saying allergies is done, and then I can move to medications. Here you can see the codeine, Lyrica, penicillins all been added, and then my egg and fish that was already on there, and hit the medications. So up until this point, it's kind of straightforward. The allergies has a couple little extra nuances to it. And just as a reminder, the reason why the allergies is the way that it is so that when we do these medications, we are going to be able to have the drug safety alerts working. I'm hoping. Okay, perfect. All right. This page that I'm on right now, this is where the bulk of the remainder of our time together will be spent, is the medications. Each of those first 3 tabs, fairly easy to use, and they're easier than manually transcribing to the chart. It also increases the accuracy of the information being transcribed, right? Because it's on the document, we then are easily able to apply it to our record. Now this medications here, mind you, I did use a different CCD, and it's kind of odd, this document, but I'm going to tell you a lot of different situations. All of these top ones are a special situation, so I'm going to come down here to the bottom first. Okay, so as I was looking through this particular resident, normally the bulk of what you're going to see is going to look like these that I have down here at the bottom, where you can see a drug name, a full order, and you'll see a continue and stop with the source start date of that particular order. Over on the right-hand side of this box on the left-hand side, but right-hand side of the left-hand side of the box, I guess. Sounds horrible. You're going to be able to see the source of this information. So I have this docosat sodium is from a CCD that came from some hospital. The famotidine came from healthcare org, some hospital, etc. So these are all examples of where multiple CCDs were selected. And so the source column, this one right here, is where that information come from. Now, the example I don't have here for you is if I pretend like Stephanie here was a readmission, if I had not discontinued orders on her previous day, I could also see my name of my care setting as some of the source orders, and that would be reflective of this order is already on the patient record. Okay. And if something was not discontinued from your record, that would play into, am I going to discontinue the one that was on the chart, continue the new one? Is it a change? All the same things you do when you manually transcribe, but looking at this source column is very pertinent in how you make your decisions, okay? Now, with that being said, I'm just going to move forward with these and say, oh, okay, docosat sodium, it's a 100 milligram capsule. We're taking 1 capsule by mouth daily as needed for constipation and hold for loose stools. Perfect. If that order is going to continue while the patient is in my care setting, I just simply hit continue. And it takes a copy of this order, pushes it over to the right. Now, with that order over on the right, and I'm sorry for the extra scrolling, everything on the right-hand side is my anticipated orders. These are the ones that I'm planning when I talk to the doc to say, hey, Stephanie admitted she has the following orders, and finding out if the doctor is going to change any of those orders, theoretically. Okay, so let's say with this docosat sodium that has the copy over here. Now, I did lose the special instructions from the source. Therefore, I have a special instructions here where I can add those same things. Whoops, let me can hit cancel. I'm actually going to, I'm just going to copy this, I'm going to cheat. And I'm going to put that back in for my special instructions. So special instructions are the same as the special instructions you're already very familiar with, okay? And I can put those in, and when this order gets saved, it'll be in its entirety for the drug, strength, amount to administer, and my special instructions, okay? And actually I lied, those were already here, but bear with me. Sorry, everybody. But I do have a comment. This add comment is something that, if applicable, you might choose to use. The add comment, a good example for this that I would say for you is if you have additional information that maybe you want to share with the doctor when you're looking for approval for these orders, anything you put in the add comment will not be a part of the order. It's only going to be a part of this reconciliation. So maybe it is, daughter reports, mom has been taking routinely. Okay. And if that's information I want to share with the doctor, I can do so. I think I had it as an as needed, right? So that comment is something. If I add a comment, it'll show you a date and timestamp of what was written. And if I want to come back later and edit the comment and say, MD ordered to remain PRN frequency or something, I can put that in and I have an additional date and timestamp with all that information on it. That's just some examples, but the comment itself is something that will not go anywhere else. It'll only remain on this page. But it does allow you to reflect some of that information that comes about from interviewing the resident, or maybe they bring in a patient listing or any of those sorts of things. Okay. So that's this first order. Now I'm going to go through these bottom orders. I'm going to keep these very simple for a moment, and I'm going to say, yep, I'm continuing all of these the way that they are. And then I'm going to work my way to the top of the page. Okay, so let's pretend those are all the same. I would add any special instructions as applicable, all of those things. Okay, now these orders that are up here at the top, these came over, but they cannot be continued as is. And that could be for a number of different reasons. First of all, you can see on this one, this just says a drug name, no strength, no amount to administer, no frequency. Obviously, we can't configure it because it's an incomplete order. So it's showing that it's stopped, and it's automatically giving me a reason of the order requires modification beyond basic correction. There's just not enough information on the document I selected. Okay. And that is going to be the same for the Xanax, the vitamin C, this Flora, Synthroid. But then we get to the Cortipane, and that one has 300 milligrams oral tablet, but no frequency, right? Same for the Proventil, the probiotic. Here we go. Here's this PNV, prenatal multi-oral supplement. Take 1 tablet by mouth daily. This is a complete order. This is the example I want to use for us. So the fact that it shows stopped and edit, what it's saying is it read this complete order from the CCD, continuity of care document, but the drug that's on that document does not match what we have in our drug formulary. Therefore, it cannot be continued as is. The hyperlink and the edit, if I click on either of these, they're both going to do the same thing. They're going to allow me to start a search to find the corresponding drug in our formulary so that I can update this drug name and continue the order. So we're looking at the PNV 122 iron and folic acid. And I'm going to pretend like I know that this is this one, okay? But it's the only one that's a tablet, actually. And that's a bad example, but I'm selecting, and we're going to say, I know for certain this is exactly the same drug, okay? And what I'm able to do by clicking on that, you could see that it gave me the possible matches. And then I selected, and then we hit update medication. Now what that does is it takes that particular drug and it updates it into something that I can use. It also show down here at the bottom, this is what the document said. This is what I updated it to, and now I can continue just like those first examples. That's similar to when you're reading off of the paper orders and you're typing into the drug formulary. Here, it's just giving you the ability to make an update to that order text so that we can continue with it. Now I can continue, brings it over to the right as my anticipated order, and I can work through those. Same thing, the omega-3 multivitamin here, I can do the edit or the word. They both do the same. Same thing, the multivitamin, omega, we're going to grab this one. This is my new updated one. Update, so shows my original one that came over. Now I've updated it to match the formulary and matrix care. Continue. And that one's going to give me an error just because it's a weird environment. Bear with me. That's what happens when we do this in the training environment. Let's try to edit this one. This one did not have any results return, which can sometimes happen. And if that happens, you're going to have this medication cannot be matched into our drug formulary. Therefore, you're going to enter via the add order, which I'll show in a moment. So this one will remain stopped. Let's try this one, the lower tab order. And same, this one, the way that it's written on my document is going to make me add it directly. That doesn't mean just because we had it on here that lower tab is not searchable. It's just how it was written on my fake document. So I'm going to roll my way all the way up here to the top. Okay. So each of these are currently stopped. Of course, I would be working these through and through one by one by one. So now that I've got up here, now I'm going to have additional orders. Either they're going to be items that I have to add directly because they couldn't be entered the way that this is. Let me see if I can't do this one. Yeah. So if I do this one, the 400 unit capsule, again, update, continue, you work through all of them. Now, any orders that it says you cannot add from here and you need to add to the review and reconcile, or it could be even that you have additional, you might have additional protocol orders that you have. Maybe you have a pain protocol, so everybody gets the Tylenol 325 that gets added for an oral and a parectal, or you have your bowel protocol that might be added. Any of those items and or things that you couldn't add here, you're going to touch this add order. And now you can add those from this page instead of doing it on the order screen. And this is distinct to only medications. But here you've got this enter 2 characters to start a search. So I'm going to use Tylenol. Okay, so I start to type Tylenol. And if I want it to be the 325, I can type in some of Tylenol until I find the drug that I'm looking for. Click Tylenol 325. And then it's going to open this page here for me to continue to write my order details. First thing, I need to say, what is the source of this particular medication being added to the reconciliation? So I'm going to say that this one is a facility protocol. Okay. So my source type could be resident, family, physician, etc. I'm going to say other. And then if I say other, I'm going to have to say what that source is. And I'm going to say, community pain protocol. Okay, whatever it may be, but you have to say where it came from. If you say resident, you will not have to further describe, but everything else, once you put it in, you'll have to say, if you say family, you'll have to say Brother Joe, physician, Dr. Jones, whoever it may be, you're going to enter those extra details. Once you've got your source type and source entered, now you're ready to complete the order. So if I have my 325 milligram tablet, if we're going to give 650, then I can select here for my 2 tablets. Note that on this dosages, it will try to help you determine what the most commonly ordered strength or dosages for the drug and strength that's selected. So being that it's Tylenol 325, most common is 1 tablet or 2 tablets every Q4 or Q6 hours PRN. Whatever it's showing in these fields is because the drug nursing drug handbook or common orders within the drug formulary say that those are the most common administrations. However, you do have the ability to say, nope, that's not what I'm looking for. I'm looking for a custom dosage or even a quantity where I could type in, 4 tablets, for instance. But anything that's up at the top is going to be what is the most commonly ordered items, and that's what makes them on here, and it'll be different per drug. So you won't see the same thing. It's all about what are you looking at up here. Then we have our frequency. I'm going to say this is a Q6 hours PRN. So every 6 hours up here at the top, same thing. And if I needed a different frequency, it's down below. Okay. Coming from what's in your environment. And here's my PRN as needed. So instead of having to go get a frequency for PRN, I can just check the box when I enter it from this side. Then we have our route. Route is going to give you the most common administration for the drug and dose form that we have. So of course it's probably oral, but if it's something else, you can see all of these down here. And if I needed to, I'd be able to start to type in whatever I'm looking for, and that will help you to find that alternate dose or route, I'm sorry. Dispense directive. So this is going to default to substitution permitted. If the doc has written a DAW or dispense is written, you could change it. And then we move into the start date. If we're starting this today, okay. Something that I really love about this location is that if I needed this to be for a duration, if I put a 5 in here, I can then select days, weeks, or months. And if I do so, it will automatically populate the stop date for me, which is really nice. We don't have that in the other order writer that you're using for those 1-by-1 entries. And if you need it open-ended, of course, it'll remain right here. But once you enter a duration, it'll automatically uncheck this. Then we have our special instructions. So here I put a Tylenol order in so I could do for pain or temp greater than 101.9. And then maybe even my not to exceed 3 grams of APAP in 24 hours. Any of those things that you would normally enter to your orders, you're able to do here. And if your diagnosis, that little drop down list that you have inside of your orders, if it is required on your orders today, then this would have a red star on it and you'd be able to select. And these are all of the diagnoses that were already reconciled from the CCD in combination with what was on the face sheet. So they're available for you for use and following your existing protocol. If it's not required on your face sheet, you can then choose to use it or not, like I'm going to do. And I'm going to touch add order. Now, when I touch that add order, it's going to add that order to the left-hand side. So just because I have it as entered, it could be something that, in this case, I put it as a community pain protocol that everybody gets. But let's pretend that this came from the brother said, yeah, she's taking this, here's this drug list from home and they bring it to you. That's information they're sharing with you, but it doesn't mean you're absolutely going to continue those items. So by putting it on this page, you're reflecting and acknowledging that you received that information to reconcile, but it doesn't mean you have to continue. I can continue, or I could say stopped. And my reason for the stopped, I can come in, it's going to default to no longer indicated, or I could come in and say any of these reasons here, and I can say MD, I could say from home med list, MD did not approve. Okay, so therefore we're taking that information coming in from the family member, but we don't have to carry those out. And this is all going to still be a part of our reconciliation. Okay, so I worked through a lot of these. I added that one order. Once I'm all done with reconciling the available orders from the CCD, adding anything on this page that was not on the list. Now I have, or I need, hold on one second while I drink something. So now I need to complete my DUR, my drug utilization review, and potentially get these written to the record. So the first thing is for the DUR, I have this, I acknowledge that any continued orders will be transferred to the resident orders. All other orders will be discontinued. So anything that says stopped, those will be stopped and discontinued. If I put stop and the source over here was my care settings name, then those would also be DC'd from the active orders on the patient record. Okay, so I'm going to check this box. And once I check it, you see a little spin of the dial. And what that's doing is it's reading all of the orders that I prepared, and it's doing the drug utilization review, or DUR. And the response that I see on this page is any of the alerts that would have triggered when if I was to manually enter these on the orders add order page. But here I get them all together. So I have a contraindication and I have 2 other alerts for duplicate therapy. Okay, so now I can see I have 2 options. I can either expand and select the reason individually and say for this one, the resident was previously on the medication, they're going to be monitored, and I could answer each one individually, okay, one by one. Or if the reason or the override reason is the same for everyone, then I can also instead choose to do select common override reason. And in this case, then I can select, hey, the prescribers are aware, it's going to be monitored, and I have an optional comment. And if I apply the override reason, that reason will be applied to all 3 of my alerts. And then I hit, and you can see right here, prescribers aware. And the first one that I did individually kept its reason because I'd already answered it. With that acknowledge, now we can see that we're back on this page. And down here at the bottom, this statement that used to be black text is now a green hyperlink with a green check mark saying we took care of that step. And I have my print and my acknowledge. But before I get to these, looking over here on the right, here you can see these little icons. These are the icons of the DUR being completed, okay, showing each of the orders. This one was a drug to allergy interaction. Down below, we had the duplicate medications, okay. So I can see those DUR responses here on this reconciliation page. I have 2 options to kind of talk about right here. One, let's say that you prepare these orders, you go through the DUR, and now maybe you want to print this out. Maybe your doctor comes in and he doesn't sign orders electronically. So you want to print this out and put it on the clipboard for when he comes to the care setting to do rounds. That's a possibility. Maybe you need to send this to get signed by the prescriber, all in however you want to carry this out. But this is what the print looks like. So if I click the print icon, you can see this cool report right here. So it's a medication reconciliation. You can see the resident's name, their admitted date, attending physician, facility. Here is the result of my admission readmission that came from a document search. Still currently in progress because I have not acknowledged or written or pushed these over to the record yet. They're still just on this page, okay? Left-hand side, all of my source orders, everything on the right, the ones that are my anticipated orders. If I had my DUR, you can see my response to those, okay, all the way down. Whoops. And if you want to use this to obtain a wet signature from the prescriber, you can see there's a signature field available on the bottom, and you can see my status is currently acknowledged. Once I complete this, it'll change to complete. Okay, So that's what the print looks like. You can use the print or not, but it is an option for you. And then when you're ready, you use this acknowledge button, and the acknowledge button is going to push these over to the record. So right now you can see all of these are black text. And also before I do that acknowledge, I also want to point out that right now, Stephanie is an admitted resident, okay? So if you're an admitted resident, then when we acknowledge, then the orders will push over to active orders, but they will be in an unverified status, okay? If the patient is not yet admitted, then when I acknowledge the orders, they will go to pending orders, okay? So it's based upon what their current status of census is as to where they will land. So she's in-house, so these are going to go to active. I click on acknowledge, and it spun for a little minute there while it took care of this. And now you can see that each of these are a blue hyperlink. If I was to click on any one of these, you can see it's inside the patient's record, yet they are all unverified. Okay, so all of those got written to the record at the same time. When I did this reconciliation, I worked that review of the available orders from the CCD. And now I'm here on this page for everything that was prepared. And at this point, I might still have a paper copy of the after visit summary to make sure, because sometimes the CCD gets written, but then when the patient arrives, you might have a different piece of paper that came with the patient, and you might use those to cross-reference here as either the same nurse or another nurse comes in to complete the process. So one is verifying, that gets done on this page. And note that every single one of these orders will come into the system on the medications flow sheet. So the step that you're going to take here is going to be to edit. So I clicked on the vitamin D3. I'm going to be checking the accuracy of this. Is this the correct time? Did I have any of my applicable special instructions? If it needs to have any med notes, I'm going to add those at this time. And if that particular order needs to go to a different flow sheet, I would also do that at this time and hit next. And by working that process and saving it, I'm also verifying that order. So you can see that on this page is where you will change those 3 items and make sure everything's valid. Now, if I come into this order and I'm like, nope, this actually needs to be DC'd, I can DC it from this page. Let me hit cancel for a moment. You also can see that safety alert. Remember, we had that duplicity. Technically on the duplicate meds, I would have corrected those. I would have pushed 2 of them back to the left-hand side before I acknowledged the orders. I just didn't do that as I talked through the example with you all. So here I'm going to DC on this side. So I'm going to DC, the order is going to be DC. This part is similar to what you do today. Do DC that order. And then instead of verifying, I DC'd the order, and the DC of that verified the order. And I would work through each of these. Now for our time here, I'm just going to cheat, and I'm going to go over to facility verify orders, and I'm just going to verify all of these. Oh, for Stephanie. Okay. And we're going to pretend like I did them one by one. But coming back to the patient record, we can see, you would have done that 1-to-1 and making all the changes. Now all of these are verified, updated, and all kind of set. So that process all came from the inbox, an external source document, and we can see this reconcile available to us and a hyperlink, and this is kind of hanging out on this page. So now, a couple different things to know about the inbox. This page in your environment is going to automatically purge every 30 days. So what that means is you can see in my environment, I only have 15 entries. So if I expand this, you can see I'm looking at all 15 on this one page. Okay. The maximum amount you can view on the page is 100, and then the pagination, go back to 10. The pagination, this 1, 2, this is how you'd navigate page to page. Okay. Now, when something gets to be a year old, or sorry, 30 days old, they will automatically fall off of this page. Okay. Now, if I have a search result and I come over here and I'm like, you know what? I don't even need this. I can choose to manually remove a line and say, hey, we don't need this one. Use that remove link and hit this remove file. And now Chris has been removed from the page. And now I only have 14 instead of 15. Okay. So that's the remove. That's the way you can manually bring things off of the page. If you search and view documents and then you do your reconciliation, like we just did with my record, you're going to see it here up to 30 days later. It's just going to fall off of this page, but it is complete. As long as you have new items on here, you're always going to see this 1 up here until you're at 100%. So if you look at this page and you're like, oh, we don't need this one for Stephanie. If you have someone whose job is to keep this page clean, you're either working it or you're removing them, then that 30-day purge is just in case you fall behind and you haven't been removing them, because any of those searches remain active. Now, if a search result is removed in error or you need it again, you always have that manual search on the front, on the resident's face sheet. Okay. And then you can pull it that way. Now, something else that exists is if I go in again to this view, okay, for Stephanie, let's say that Stephanie has, I know that she's going out tomorrow for a scheduled outpatient, okay? If I know that and I want to preemptively program to set a search for the next day to get a copy of the paperwork, I have the option to do a scheduled search. So on a scheduled search, I can say, okay, the surgery's tomorrow. I want to schedule an automatic search at noon on the 6th. And that way I can generate a 12, I'll do 12:15 and hit schedule search. And what that's doing is it's saying, okay, I know there's going to be something I'm going to want in the future. And here I can schedule it. And then it's going to ask me, if I schedule it, when that new row shows up, do you want to remove any existing rows? You probably noticed my name was a couple times down that page and I manually removed one and then I had another one on there. If I want that new search to replace and take the 3 that I already had and just replace it with one brand new search, then I can say remove existing rows. If I plan on going back to each of those previous searches, then I can keep existing rows, which personally, I've said this with product, I don't see an instance where you'd want to keep the existing rows, but product says, yes, they might. I don't know. I always say remove the existing rows because the most recent search is going to give you the most up-to-date availability of documents. So when I hit remove existing rows, now I have a scheduled search. It's now showing as a schedule and it will remain scheduled until 12:15 on the 6th. And then that will push through and give me a new search line at that date and time. So now that we've got this scheduled search, okay, so that's another way that you can use the system to your benefit. Then let's talk about this column here. So the date and time of the received upload, that is going to mean that if I go into this view, I'm going to have the availability of documents that existed externally up until this moment. That's why new searches are needed to get the most up-to-date information. So if you have someone who you're at the planning for an admission, right? If we take this back to those automated searches that I talked about, you might have the referral that's going to produce a line of what's available right now when you create a face sheet in Matrix Care. Then when you maybe 3 or 4 days later, the resident says, yes, we've chosen your care setting. We plan on coming in there. Maybe your admissions person might put in a pre-admission hold census line or a scheduled move-in census line. They touch census, that's going to create another search line. Now it's going to give you things that have been due from that moment backwards. And each line is going to be stopped by this date and time. So hopefully that makes sense. So to get the most recent, you do need those subsequent searches to get more items. Now, next, the facility status. The status is going to actually show you the status of the resident in matrix care. So if you look at Bruce here, Bruce had a completed search on earlier today at 11:36, but he now is discharged. So at the time of the search, he may have either had a no census. This down here is somebody with a no census. Then we have in-house, or if they turn around and discharge later. But that discharge is not meaning that they discharged on this date. They could, granted, this is 8/4. So if I look at, sorry for this, no census. I don't have an example of this. Maybe over here. Go to this one. Better example. Maybe. Nope, none of these people are in discharge. What I wanted to show is these are all like 7/21. So on 7/21, the search could have been initiated, but since then they might have admitted and discharged. So even though today is 8/4, if I still have a search in the inbox from 7/21 and they since have discharged, it's not saying they discharged on this date. It's saying right now, at the moment that I'm looking at that search result, their status is discharged. And in your care setting, you might say, you know what, if they discharge before we look at it, we're just going to remove the line. Those are all things that you can come together with. Okay. Sorry, I couldn't show that one a little better. Now, another thing that is not showing here is that might have to try, I don't know if I can even do it. I'm just gonna have to tell you about it since I don't have an example. With this one reconciled, let me go into Stephanie here for the Matrix Care Center. Okay, I'm actually gonna come in here and I'm gonna add a census. So I had Matrix Care Center admitted on the 1st. I'm going to add a census line and discharge this patient as of the 3rd, yesterday. Okay. And see if this will show what I want to show you. Oops. All right, so I've got this open census. Let me see if I was able to manipulate this the way I want. Yes, perfect. So here's Stephanie. Notice here on the left. So think back where I said, when I prepare the orders, if the patient is not admitted yet, any of those prepped orders will go to pending orders. If they're already admitted, they'll go to active, which is where we picked them up today. Okay. Now, if the patient is not admitted, we prepare the orders, we do all of the reconciliation tabs and the orders, we push them over to pending. We can also use the inbox to admit the resident if you have security access to add census. So admit resident, if I click from this location, here you can see my return. I'm going to do that as of today. Returns to the same room and bed, hit save. Now you can see I used that admit resident. Okay. So the inbox becomes a tool for, this is where we have all of these search results. And then what we do with them is via the view. At this point, what I'd really like to do is ultimately get in and show you a little bit about what's in your environment and do a finer dive into those, but I don't want that on the recording. So I'd like to ask at this point if there is any questions on the overall functionality. before I quickly show the security that's involved with this so that that's on the recording, and then I'll show your live environment. Questions from anybody, situations of usage that I did not bring up? No questions? All right, show a couple more things before I turn off the recording then. So first of all, so when we think back here on Stephanie's chart, actually, I'll even do this. Let me back up one more time. So I'm going to say that I'm completely done with this line. And maybe I come over and I'm like, Kate, we're done with that. We've done our auditing. We've looked at these items, and I get rid of this line. And it says, okay, we're done with that. That line is out of here. Now, when I go to the resident space sheet, if I ever want to get back to see what was imported or that information, then what we're able to do is under the resident tab, you have a medication reconciliation, and the medication reconciliation is where you can see my completed reconciliation from my document search, and I can view this at any time. Okay, so this is always in the record, accessible for those that have access to this area. So it doesn't matter that you're removing it from the inbox, but it's here and accessible. So that's one thing I wanted to share. Sometimes people are worried about removing it from the inbox, thinking they're losing their history, which you're not. Next thing is for you, John, for security is, and I will send this separately after the call as well. Under security setup, for everybody being able to use Exchange and Data Manager. First of all, under resident, you have the face sheet section here. If you want the individuals to have that ability to do the manual face sheet search, then we have this document search token. Only the individuals with this particular token will be able to push the button on the face sheet. And you do want to make sure that that is limited to only those individuals who are like, yes, we want to initiate a search. My recommendations would be your admissions department, your medical records, and like MDS coordinator for the document search, and then anyone else that is within that. That's who I would recommend that particular token, because other individuals, especially if they're not trained on Exchange, they'll be like, what's this button do? And they'll push it loads of times, and they'll just start feeding your inbox with no knowledge of what that action does. Okay. So that's the first token to be aware of. Then we also
That's
have,
just,
sorry, go
I'm
ahead.
sorry. I have a quick question. That's just a token, right? And that's not a template. That doesn't have to be a corporate template.
No, it's just a token under this face sheet and resident record that's under resident. Yep. So that's this one. And that could be anybody, whoever you give it to. Now, then we also have anybody who is already able to add allergies or diagnoses. If they already have the allergies functionality, they'll be able to do the allergies tab. If they already can add a diagnosis, if they already can add an ICD-10, then they would be able to do the diagnosis tabular. And if they already can make changes to demographics on the face sheet, then they would be able to do so with Exchange. No additional tokens for that, okay? What they do need to be able to get there is going to be, we'll collapse these two, is under facility. They will need inbox, okay, right here. And the tokens that are relative is if you just want them to see the inbox is view. If you want them to have the ability to remove a line, like I just was showing the red link, you'll use the remove document. If you want them to search documents, like click the view link and see what's available and start saving to the record, is view document. And the reconcile document, if that's an individual that you want to be able to do data manager. So that's inbox under facility. And if they can't see the inbox, they can't reconcile. So this will be the one that you'll be looking to. And we'll also glance at some of the templates that you have because that's already included in several of them. And then the medication reconciliation is under, oops, got to remember this one. Sorry about that. There we go. Under clinicals, there's a section for medication reconciliation, and that's if you want them to be able to hit print or mark it invalid, then they'd need this section. This usually is going to just be those that would review the record later, not for carrying out the steps. So that section. And I do have a little handout that I'll send separately for you, John, so that you can use that and make sure you update and review the applicable individuals. So those are the security tokens. And then lastly, within clinicals, if they're doing the medication reconciliation itself, then they must have this discontinue multiple orders on physician and on nursing, even though nursing isn't really related to it. But if this token is missing, then they won't be able to see the medication tile tabular. And that's simply because when we do, all of these together on that page, you're adding and removing multiple orders at the same time. So without that one token, they won't see it at all. And so this is a particular one that kind of opens the door to being able to do the medication reconciliation. And with that, again, one more reminder, any possible questions before I stop the recording and show you your live environment? All right, let me stop the recording. Okay, so now that the recording